Hi, and welcome to another episode of My Take. My name is Taiwo, and over the past couple of episodes, I've been talking about purpose, discovering your purpose, walking, WALKING, in your purpose. And in this episode, I want to bring all of this full circle by going from a theoretical standpoint to actually examining someone who is walking through all of this and doing life. And so today I'm joined by a very good friend of mine. She's actually one of my heroes. And join me as I welcome Miss Tolani Martins. Yay! Welcome, Tolani. Okay.
Hi.
So before we get into the conversation, I want to ask you to please introduce yourself to our guests, and then we'll just dig right in. So,
Hi. Hi. So as Taiwo mentioned, I am Tolani Martin. I'm 53 years old, and I've known Taiwo for more than 2/3 of those years, because I think we met when we were 18 or something.
19 years. Wow.
We were 18 years old, I think, when we met. Not that that's, well, we already dated ourselves. I said I'm 53. I live in England. I live in Cobham in Surrey, which is a southwest suburb of London, really. It's only about 30 minutes out from London. And I am a mother of 2 children, a boy and a girl, a boy who's 16 and a girl who is 14. We've lived in England now for 2 years. My husband's job moves us around, and so we've moved. Now we're in England, and we've been here for 2 years. That's me in a nutshell. I'm Nigerian, very much so. I mean, my maiden name is Oguleye, and my name is Motolani, and my married name is Martin without the S. Nigerians tend to give me an S.
Martins.
Because we're more familiar with Martins.
Yeah.
So yes, Tolani Martin.
Okay, so one of the reasons why I wanted to do this with you, and why I said at the beginning that you're one of my heroes, and the reason why I'm saying this is because something happened after we left college, not immediately afterwards, but you and I ended up in England after college, and then something happened where you then left the UK, and I'm really interested in going through that journey with you, from being in the UK or in England to be specific, and then heading over to the US, and then what you did. So, do you mind just sort of walking me through that section of your life? I'm really particular, and I think for the audience, that will be the basis of what we're going to examine or really explore. So please go ahead.
Okay, so basically, when I graduated from university in Nigeria, what everyone was doing then was to do the youth corps. And I started my youth corps and then decided that I wanted to move to the UK. And I'm a British citizen. So it was an easy one for me, although my father was like, why are you going? But I think I had a bit of an independent streak where I knew the only chance for me to ever live alone before I got married was if I wasn't at home. Otherwise, the way it works in Nigeria is you stay in your parents' house until your husband comes and takes you away. So I wanted to have that time of being alone and living alone and being an adult and navigating life on my own as an independent person. So I moved to the UK. When I got to England, I was lucky enough to get a job with a marketing company as some kind of like admin assistant type thing, executive assistant to the CEO. So I did that, and that's how I first got my taste of what marketing was as a profession. It was a sort of direct direct marketing agency. So after I'd been there for a while, and of course, typical Nigerian parents, my parents would call from time to time to say, well, and by the way, my first degree was in history. So it was always understood in my home that I still had to go back to get a professional degree.
Right.
My first degree was just the first degree. It was just to get a degree, but I was going to go back to school. So my parents would call and say, oh, so when are you going back and what are you going to do and what is it? So because I was in this marketing company, found out about marketing, I decided that, you know what, this is kind of where I would like to sort of go into marketing and communications. The company I was with was called the Marketing and Communications Business.
Mm.
So I then decided that I should get an MBA.
Okay.
And that's how come. And then to get an MBA, I was like, well, where do I go? I thought, I guess this is just me. I wanted to go to the best school in the world for marketing.
Okay.
Where I could get an MBA in marketing as one of my specializations, but I wanted to go to the top school. And at that time, the number one school in the world was in the States. It was Northwestern University. They have all these leagues that, various colleges all over the world are part of, and they rank them every year. So that year, and for about 2 years or 3 years before, Northwestern University, which was the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University, consistently ranked number one. So I decided this is where I needed to go to get my MBA. Also because I had found out that where you did your MBA also stood you in good stead for getting a good job afterwards. So I sort of stayed in England, took the exams, the GMAT exams, forked out quite a bit of money to go to a place called the Kaplan Institute back then. And I remember my friends were like, why are you doing it this way? Most people just go somewhere local here in England. Why do you have to go and spend all this money to do this GMAT? But I knew I had to get a really good score to make me competitive enough to get into the school, to make me attractive to the school.
Right.
So that's what I did. I buckled down, studied really hard, got a really good GMAT score, and then filled out the application. I don't know if you know anything about application to grad school in the States, but even applying to the schools was like an exam in and of itself. Writing all the essays, I would go to the library after work.
Yeah.
I literally would go to the library to write my essays. I had a cousin in the States who was helping me out, giving me some guidance. So, and I think actually that was the cousin that let me know he had gone to Dartmouth, the Tuck School of Business.
Okay.
So he opened my eyes to a bigger world out there for what I was looking to do.
Okay.
And so I did the exams and I got into Kellogg and then, raised the money and went to school. And that's how I moved to the Chicago area because Northwestern is in Evanston, which is a suburb of Chicago.
Right.
And so I left the UK in 95 to go to grad school. And that's kind of how I left England, or why I left England in 95.
Okay, so prior to this point, had you been in the States before, maybe on vacation or something, or this was
Yes, I had been a number of times, actually quite a few times. I'd been actually the first time I went to the States, I think I was 13.
Okay.
Yes, I went on holiday when I was 13. I subsequently went a number of times after, and then whilst I lived in England, I'd gone maybe at least once or twice a year. I'd visited, although I must say that nothing prepared me for living in the States. Those visits, I thought I was prepared for living in the States because I had been quite a few times. I hadn't been to Chicago actually since the first time I went, which was in 1980. But I had been to California and on the East Coast, traveled quite a bit in there. Arizona, California, New York. Those, the sort of been around, but I hadn't been to the Midwest again since I was 13.
Okay.
But I thought I was prepared for living there, but getting there and living there, it was quite tough actually.
Now, let me say, one thing I remembered was when I visited with you while you were at Kellogg, something that struck me, and I think everyone did this at the time, but you are pursuing an MBA, But I realized that you are also multitasking in the sense that while you were in school, you also had to work uh, to sustain yourself. But I remember that you were doing something with the accommodation where I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Oh my God. You
Remember
remember that?
when we visited, yeah, in Chicago, that you had something where, and I
Yes.
think even while we met, somebody was calling you. There was an issue you had to go address. Even while you and I were talking, and we just grabbed a drink. I think I'm not sure whether we were outside in some open area, and somebody was calling you. There was something you had to go take care of, and so our meeting had to end suddenly. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
Do you remember this experience?
I don't remember the incident, but I know I can imagine what you were talking about, because what it was, as you can imagine, I was self-funding when I went to business
Right.
school.
Right.
At the time, by the way, my idea of going and getting an MBA for my father, that was not a professional degree. He
Okay.
was even like, what's an MBA? What's that? That's just another generalist degree. He was
Yeah.
expecting me to either go back to law school,
Right.
or he's a chartered accountant. My mother's a
Right.
chartered accountant.
Right.
He thought maybe going somewhere down that line, just something, or go and do a banking
Right.
qualification,
Right.
something that they considered to be a profession. So when I said I was going to this school, and at that time, the fees were about $21,000 a year. He said he wasn't having anything to do with that.
Right.
Why would I go and spend close to $50,000? He had never heard of Northwestern.
Right.
So I decided this is what I wanted to do. I could kind of see clearly,
Right.
for me anyway, in my mind's eye, that this is what I wanted. So I literally had this brainwave of an idea where I did again, because I told you I worked in a direct marketing firm, right?
Right.
So I did a direct marketing campaign. I
Right.
literally wrote to a bunch of high net worth individuals, Nigerian and non-Nigerian, introduced myself, told them I was going to this school, I had gotten into this school, gave them some information about the school,
Right.
and asked for sponsorship.
Right.
And pretty much that was how I raised the funds to pay my fees. So at least enough. So when I got there, I was, as you can imagine, because I was self-funding, I
Right.
wasn't from the state, so I didn't have access to student loans and things
Yeah.
like that. I was being very mindful about my finances, and a huge chunk of the amount I needed to spend was also on accommodation.
Right.
So I was living in school accommodation for the first year.
Right.
And then I realized, so when you came, must have been the second year of my 2-year degree.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes, it must have been in my second year, because I realized that in the second year, if you were an RA, what they call a residence assistant or something like that, you
Right.
got free accommodation. But
Okay.
what you had to do as a job was you literally had master keys to everybody else's apartment in there. It was a graduate accommodation complex, just for the business school.
Right.
And they had various forms of flats, what you would call flats in England, apartments.
Yeah.
And I had the keys. So I was responsible for just making sure that if anybody got locked out, I would
Right.
help them get it. I didn't have to do any cleaning or anything like that. They had a cleaning company, but I had to supervise it.
Right.
I just had to make sure the building was running.
Correct.
So I did an interview in my first year, applied for the job, and luckily for me, I got the job. So I got my accommodation for the second year taken care of, at least money-wise. But what I had to do then was make sure I was always on call. So I couldn't go too far away over the weekends. I couldn't go too far from the dorm just in case anybody needed help.
Anything right.
And so I must have been that somebody was maybe locked out,
Correct.
or something like that, and they were calling.
And you had to leave to go take care of whatever that issue was. I remember it very well. Um,
Yes,
so let me
it
ask you,
must have,
so then,
because,
so this happened and then you completed your program. I came for
yes,
your graduation. I remembered them calling you and I was in the audience looking at you and all that. And I remember that image very well in my mind, thinking, oh my God, Tolani did this thing. I'm so proud of you, blah, blah, blah. And then I realized that there was this very tall building in downtown Chicago just by Wacker Drive. And the
Yes,
next
35 West Wacker.
was that you started working for Leo Burnett. And I think Leo Burnett was one of those uh, really successful Midwestern marketing companies. So I'm thinking, okay, wow, Tolani is doing quite well. Life is good. And so I remember I came to meet with you at your job. We went again, just we where you came down and we strolled down on Wacker Drive to go grab something to eat. And the next thing I knew, you were getting married. Okay, all that is good. And then you announced to me suddenly that you had left your job. And so in my mind, I was thinking, what is this girl smoking? What has happened to her? I why you were inspiring, or why I found you inspirational was that you had gone through all you went through without much detail. You talked likely just moments ago about how you self-funded, but I knew what that meant at a deeper level. And then after all of that, you got married and you appeared as if you just no biggie, and you just walked away from all of this. So I'm thinking maybe you walk me through how you decided to just sort of leave all this behind you and face raising children. What happened? What was that about?
Um, so when I was working at Burnett, I had done very, very well. I was actually Leo Burnett was the largest indigenous private agency in the United States at the time. It was
Right.
global. I had worked in their office in England. I'd actually come to work in the office in England for a
Okay.
little while when my mother was ill. I
I
was
remember.
transferred
Yes.
to the
Yeah.
office in the UK. I was working on a client that was global. So I was able to still meet my client's needs by working in the office in England and then working for the client's office in the UK, in Manchester. It was the Kellogg company,
Right.
coincidentally, that I went from the Kellogg school to, totally unrelated, the Kellogg food company as my client. So I'd done very well. I had become a vice president at Leo Burnett over the 8 years. I think I started in 97.
Right.
And at the time you're talking about me leaving was 2006.
Okay.
So that's what, about 9 years of working there. And I had done very well for myself, but the price you pay for that was, at that point, I was traveling a lot. I was, and it was fine because my husband traveled a lot as well. We didn't have kids. But once we decided to have kids, we
Right.
had my first child, my son, in 2004. And we suddenly realized that it became really tough to continue my job. And we had this boy at home. We had a nanny, a Nigerian nanny, who I didn't feel comfortable leaving my son overnight with.
Right.
We didn't have any family that we could call on to sort of stay and help when we traveled. And I remember somebody who used to reporting to me at work actually used to work as a sort of babysitter. She would come and spend the night. If I had to travel, I would pay her.
Okay.
And it just was a bit awkward, not having anybody to really help with the kids and the kind of job I was doing
Right.
with my son at the time. So I did it. And then when my daughter came along 20 months after my son was born, so when my son was born, I took 6 months off from birth to when he was 6 months old. And then I went back to work, jumped right back in, continued to do well, had this nanny. And like I said, was managing it. But when my daughter came, actually it was my mother-in-law who
Okay.
said, she came to visit us. And she said to us one day at the dining table, you're not both going to be able to do this
Right.
and do this parent and also do the parenting well.
Right.
Now, she just said it. And I remember my husband and I looking at her like, is this woman crazy? What's she trying to suggest?
Right.
That, no, she said something is going to have to give.
Yeah, right.
And at this point, we were relatively older
Right.
when we had children, so I was 30, I think I was about 30, 38
Okay.
when my daughter was born. Yes. So my husband was 40, 42.
Okay.
So we were kind of older.
Right.
Yes, I think, yeah. we were a little bit older as well. We thought it through and we were like, these children didn't ask to be born.
Right.
We can afford for one of us to stay home. And really, it could have been either one of us, but it was the thing fell on me because I was earning less than my husband, pretty much. That really was what it was about. So it was, well, luckily we had enough. We were both earning six figures at the time, so we weren't really worried about the financial ramifications of it. And I think also, if you know, as a woman, well, you might not know this, but we get very hormonal. So staying home with children and looking after my daughter, well, the biggest driver for me at that time was their care and caring for them.
Right.
And because I just couldn't see a way forward for how I was going to look after these two children and still balance what I knew I needed to be done on my job, the kind of job I had. At this time, my clients were Procter and Gamble. I used to fly to Cincinnati very often. I would have to spend the night. Sometimes we had to be in California shooting commercials. I would be in LA for, like a week. And my husband's job was also the same. He was traveling all over the world and just doing a lot of traveling for work. So we just couldn't see a way out of it where we could have the two at that time.
Right.
So when my daughter was born, I just never went back. And I just stayed home. I don't think I really understood the impact of what I was doing when I did it. Like I said, I was just very much in that nesting mother mode. What does my child need? What do my children need? And my son had become a toddler. The Nigerian nanny I had, I realized couldn't really handle him as a toddler. What I could see that he required, the discipline he needed, we didn't have the same way of thinking. When I would say, this boy needs some discipline, he needs some structure. And her only idea about disciplining was to beat him. And she would say, well, if I discipline him, you won't like it. And, I just realized there were things that I required that it seemed like I was the only one who could do it, or at least my husband or myself. And we had no real support network around us. Like maybe if we had friends or family members who had children the same age and they were all having their careers, and maybe we would all sort of had pulled together and I would have seen how other people were doing it. But I really had nobody around me at the time in terms of friends like me who were, running this kind of career and doing the only friend I had, actually the closest friend I had given up work. She was in the exact same position as me at work in another agency. Also a Black woman, and she had stopped working. Her husband is a successful banker, and she had gotten an MBA as well before she came in. So it just felt like, oh, this is what I'm going to have to do. And so I did it. And for a long time, it didn't really bother me because it felt like I left one job to an even harder job at the time. It was very hard because, raising children is, at least with the office, you close at a certain time and you go home, or, if you go out with your clients, you go out in the evening and you unwind, even if you're still meeting, you're talking work over drinks. With this one, you don't have an off button pretty much until the children go to bed, and then you're still. So it was a different job, but I was working full time. Although I must say that we did get a nanny. The Nigerian nanny left, and then we got another nanny who worked 3 days a week. To just sort of help me out, just so that I wasn't 100%. That was the only job I had. She helped with cleaning and looking after the kids, and then I could take my son off to nursery. So yeah.
So I like
a stay-at-home mother.
Hey guys, we are out of time, but not out of our conversation. Please join me in the next episode where we'll conclude this interview on purpose with Ms. Tolani Martin. Until next time, this is my take. If you like what you've seen so far, I want you to hit the subscribe button and click on the notification icon so you can be notified when we post our next video. And if you have any comments, please leave me one of those in the comment section. Alternatively, you can drop me an email via the email address listed below. Until next time, my name is Taiwo, and this is my take. Bye-bye.